Hot on the heels of the most boring F1 race of all time, it was up to Canada to save Formula One's reputation. Welcome to Fiends, where the F1 never ends. Just like the excitement in Montreal. Somebody somewhere must be making wishes on a monkey's paw, because the Montreal Grand Prix was incredible from start to finish, yet it was still a Verstappen victory. Given that Monaco was the worst race of all time, but ended in a Leclerc victory, I have to surmise that this monkey's paw has 3 wishes left on it. And to whoever's making these wishes, I beg of you, please, stop making wishes that affect Formula One. We've been lucky so far, but things could get ugly. Speaking of which, George Russell described his race as
ugly race on my behalf. Ugly race on my behalf, and I'm sorry for that.
And he was right. It was his race to lose. And he did.
If you ain't first, you're last.
But here's the crazy part. He still finished ahead of the $500 million man. As much as I would have loved to see George win this race, I'm not even mad that Max won. In fact, I enjoy watching this type of skill expression, where a top-tier athlete competes at a disadvantage and triumphs anyway. I don't hate Max Verstappen. What I hate is boredom. Watching Max zoom off into the distance puts me to sleep faster than a YouTuber tapping on books. But when he has to turn it on, like truly turn it on and show everyone why he's the best driver on the grid, that does it for me. I don't care if he wins every race, if every time it's a close competition that's decided on skill alone. That's racing. And it wasn't just the Grand Prix in Montreal that was great. The whole weekend was exciting, thanks in large part to the changing weather conditions. Yes, even Canada's geography had to step up to help save F1. For qualifying, it was merely the threat of changing weather conditions that added a lot of pressure to the drivers to get out there and put in hot laps. So instead of a typical session where a lot of them hang out in the garage and wait until the last moment to go out, we saw all the cars on track for the whole session, trying to get in as many hot laps as possible, chasing the track evolution before something happened to prevent that, like rain or someone hitting the wall, both of which were very real looming threats. The grid has never been tighter, and you can see that reflected in the qualifying results. Less than 0.3 of a second separated the top 7 drivers in qualifying, with the top 2 getting the exact same result down to 3 digits. No one felt safe. Except Sergio Perez. He was safe in the sense that he just signed a new contract, so he didn't need to show up. And he didn't. Going out in Q1 while Max put in the fastest lap in the same car. I've had coworkers like Checo, the kind that work their asses off while they're on probation, and then do the bare minimum as soon as their job is permanent. Okay, wait, that's not fair. Checo didn't even do the bare minimum and get the car out of Q1. And while Checo was taking a big number 2, Red Bull's number 2 team saw both drivers make it all the way to Q3, and they both finished ahead of Checo in the Grand Prix, who spent most of the race in the bottom 4 only to DNF. And you might think that's bad until you take a look at Scuderia Ferrari. They played it safe in one of the most competitive quali sessions of all time, with both drivers getting knocked out by just 2 to 3 tenths. A difference that could very well have been made up through the use of a new set of soft tires, a compound they wouldn't even end up using in the race. And even if they had, it wouldn't have mattered, as Leclerc's engine made like Carlos Sainz and torpedoed itself out of the race. I reached Fred Vasseur for comment, and he said, "Having our Monegasque driver win his home race was ecstasy, and Canada was the ecstasy hangover." And for everyone who gets that reference, how's that mid-30s depression treating you? Surely it can't be as depressing as what happened to Kevin Magnussen, a man who charged up the field gaining nearly 9 positions thanks to being on the extreme wets, who then pit at the exact correct moment only for his pit crew to not be ready with the new tires, costing him roughly 5 positions in a race where he was finally outperforming his teammate for once. Over in the other half, things were going just as poorly, if not worse, for Hülkenberg, who ended up staying out on the extreme wets for too long and lost all of the time that he had made up. By the end of the race, they finished 11th and 12th. If either of these drivers had had their race go even slightly better, they would have been in the points, which was devastating for the team. But it did bring one man a lot of joy. In lighter news, there were 2 drivers who had unexpectedly good results, and here to talk about them is the Canadian positivity guy. Jacques Villeneuve, a man who lives by the credo, "You're not wrong, you're just an asshole," is being credited for inspiring Daniel Ricciardo to prove him wrong today. During FP3, Villeneuve asked why Danny is still on the grid, saying that he's only beaten a burnt-out Vettel and an 18-year-old Verstappen, then never beat anyone ever again. Villeneuve conveniently forgot about Danny demolishing both Ocon and Hülkenberg at Renault, the same way Canada's conveniently forgotten that Jacques Villeneuve exists. Sure, he's the 1997 world champion and Canada's only F1 world champion, but he only won in 1997 because the Michael got a bit murdery. And after he stopped racing, he wasn't even a good DJ. He had to buy his own nightclub just to get gigs. Crediting him with Daniel Ricciardo's performance in the Grand Prix feels a lot like giving me credit for Lance Stroll's performance. I'm constantly dunking on the guy for not being good enough, and also hoping he steps up his game. It's the same reason I teabag in video games. I'm being disrespectful because I believe my opponent needs to up their game. I'm trying to inspire them to find it within themselves to stop the disrespect and prove me wrong. I just realized I'm more like Jacques Villeneuve than I cared to admit. And now back to your regularly scheduled programming. This week, for the poll of the week, I asked, be honest, before this weekend, did you know how ties in qualifying were broken? And roughly 1/3 of you admitted, no you didn't, and the other 2/3 of you are filthy stinking liars. And now, for everyone who made it to the end of the video, here's the spicy joke of the week. Having a race this exciting to watch was a godsend for me because I hurt my back recently and was bedridden on race day. It was a welcome distraction from the feeling of lying in bed, trying to push through the pain, and contemplating whether I want to even live anymore. Or as I like to call it, the feeling of being Charles Leclerc. Having a race like Montreal right after Monaco feels a lot like winning the lottery 2 weeks after you declared bankruptcy. And I'm happy to say, I called it. Right after Monaco, I called it that 2024 was going to be more exciting than last year, even in the races where Verstappen wins. And if you want to see how I came to that conclusion, why don't you head on over and watch that video. I'll see you there.